thanks for coming. And we're going to be talking about some work that we've been doing jointly, and this is within one of the USIBD committees. As Kevin said, this is the title of the talk is Plays Well with Others, because we've been working internally between companies. We all work for different companies, but we've been working within USIBD to put some standards in place. And it's a work in progress, and you'll see some of that today. But the panelists, as Kevin already told you, and so I just wanted to give kind of an introduction as to what is this USIBD IDEF, and to set the stage for that, the question is, what are POP platforms, pictures on plans? There are a number of software solutions out there that allow you to put pictures on plans. And what is IDEF? It's the Imagery Data Exchange Format that we're developing within USIBD to enable the exchange of that data. So just in terms of a POP platform, you can see in the image here, there's a plan up in the upper right-hand corner. It has a little viewer, or a pie-shaped symbol on it that's showing you the direction of the image that you see, and there's two versions of the image. The larger image was taken prior to cover, and the smaller image taken after the sheetrock was on, and there is a pointer in that smaller image to an outlet that was covered. So this is the kind of thing that you can use these pictures on plans platforms to do. So the way we organize the panel here, we've all had experience with this, and what we're going to do is we have some questions that I've pre-asked the panel. We'll go through those questions. Each of us will answer from our own perspective, and then we'll go on to the next question. So first question is, what got you interested in POP platforms? And my wife and I built a house in 1999, and just before we built the house, she bought me a state-of-the-art digital camera, which was a 3-megapixel, $800 fixed focus camera. And I took a lot of pictures of the house, and just for fun, I organized them into a viewer you see here. And one of the, I did that kind of as a fun project, but then I realized there were uses for it after we moved into the house, and we've been using it quite a lot. And this is one of the examples that we used it on. If you see that handrail, we needed to connect that. This past year, we needed to connect it to the corner of the building there, and I wasn't sure what was in that, what was holding up that corner. So by going in and looking at the pictures and prior to the, just at the framing level, you can see right there's a pole in the center of that picture, which is the same corner that this was added onto, and the date that it was added was this year. The date the picture was taken is 1999. The fact that I could still find that within about 20 seconds of using the viewer made it possible for us to make sure we didn't electrocute someone by drilling into a wire or something like that. Anyway, so that's my story, and Philip?
Yeah, should I speak from here? Yeah, interesting story there, Ken. So my story is working in a really harsh construction environment. So I work for a large general contractor, really big hospital project, 1 million square feet, building a couple of those around the Bay Area. And it's hectic. It's hectic to try to get everyone on this, like, on the job site, the architect, engineer, subcontractor, just to see what's going on. So we kept having to go in and schedule these meetings with people. It was really inefficient. So man, why don't we just use a photo? You know, why don't we just capture the job site and bring that to the people? That was the kind of what got me into the whole, you know, adding photos to drawings. I think most of you here are here probably, you know, you're here with GeoWeek and USIBD probably because of 3D layer scanning. And now, yeah, 3D layer scanning was the big hit right in the last decade or so. It's come a long way. And my company was focused on tracking construction progress. So really going from construction to tracking construction progress. But what really got my mind interested in pictures on drawings, like, it's like, hey, why go from something really complicated like layer scanning to something simple like photos? Well, in 2016, 2017, the Ricoh Thetas started to come out. These 360 cameras that cost only $300, $400 that you can buy from Best Buy or Amazon were just showing up everywhere. And so it was a great opportunity to jump on that and create a platform around that. Just the accessibility. So rather than having to pay, you know, $50, $60, $80,000 for a scanner, you can get a lot of the same benefit of just tracking what's happening in construction with just simple photos. Obviously, it's not going to be as, you know, get you as much, but it can get you a lot on the way for a lot cheaper.
Okay, thanks, Philip. Next up is Paul Tice.
Hi, my name is Paul Tyson. Yeah, thanks, Ken. I got interested in this sort of industry through historic preservation work. So when I started doing this about 2010, reality capture stuff, we were documenting historical sites where they have to remove stonework and stuff and you know, sort of rehab walls or groundwork, and then they had to put the stones exactly back into the same spot because some of these are national treasures, and they want to, you know, sort of keep this on the National Historic Register, which means you have to keep everything in place as it is when it became registered. So reality capture was a great venue or a tool to put that data where it needs to go and remember where it is and to map it. So in this example, this is a Crater Lake Lodge in Oregon, deepest lake, I believe, in at least the United States, maybe North America. It's 2,000 feet deep, and it's a big crater. So we had to map this lodge, the pavers, the stones out there. And what I did is I held a drone, Phantom 4 Pro, out of just without propellers, and had my wife trigger the camera as I walked along to make an orthomosaic of that, because there's no real good way to map a stonework like that. It's sort of irregular and complicated. And we needed a way to view that so that the contractor could know exactly where those stones that were labeled by number and a sort of a grid line, where to put them back. And so my company developed a software called Resolute. We have a booth here, and that allows us to view orthomosaics, 360 photos, point clouds, kind of an aggregator data, but high resolution stuff. And that gave them the ability to share that with project teams and you know, view this kind of information and make decisions on how they're going to do the construction project. So that's kind of how I started, was the historic preservation world, and grew out from there.
Okay, and next up is Noah from Naviz.
Thank you for having me here on the panel. So as you can see here, this is actually a photo of my stepdad. This is not me. And what happened here was my mom and stepdad were remodeling a house, and they were about 150 miles away during this process. So one, they had to trust their contractor, which can be challenging at times. And in the situation of this, they, being in Central California, they're very conscious of their water usage. And so specifically, he asked for a recirculating loop in the wall so that he could heat the water before it ever leaves the wall. Now, this contractor would send photos, but frequently you wouldn't know where they were or when they were actually time-stamped. And so we showed up one time, and the drywall was in, and he queried the plumber, you know, is my recirculating loop in here? So that was one of multiple mistakes that resulted in drywall coming down to be resolved. And so for me, seeing the just direct benefit, even on such a small scale, where if these photos were uploaded to a plan at the time they were taken. Hopefully this would have been mitigated. Same thing happened with some plumbing pipes that were routed right in front of an air conditioning door multiple times, where contractors just sort of slapped it up, hopefully wouldn't notice, and unfortunately for them, we did notice and we were able to rectify it, but not without some effort on their part.
Okay, moving on to the next question, which is one image that shows, or series of images show the value pictures on plans. And this was a project that we did a number of years ago. On the back side of this wall was an art gallery that was Venetian plaster. And you know, if you got Venetian plaster, you don't just patch it. You got to redo the whole wall. A new artwork came in, and they had anticipated the artwork by having some electrical outlets at various places, but they weren't in the right place for this artwork. So they needed to put the artwork on the backside of this wall, and they were able to use the images to find the wire that was, and you can see it laying on the floor there, that was running up the wall, and go into the back of cabinetry that was already in place and drill in through the back of the cabinetry to get the wire and bring it out in exactly the right spot for this artwork that needed power. So the contractor that we worked with that did this project told us that that one image saved his client $20,000 in rework fees. And you know, there's a lot of other stories like that I could tell you, but we got limited time, so we will move on to Philip.
Yeah, I think the biggest reason for photos on plans is see that huge traffic jam right there on the top right? Avoiding that, I think that's reason enough. Or many of you have flown in here to the Denver airport. Lots of airports these days are just impacted. So what I say is the biggest one is just saving travel on site. So if you're able to like capture sites in an immersive way as well, which is something that you know, we kind of specialize here in, that our interchange supports. You can have that, you know, almost a replacement for, you know, for having to visit there. Similar to Noah's story, talking about a remodel is 150 miles away. Just not having to go and constantly go back to physically see stuff. In 2021, you know, with the COVID pandemic, we saved 1.9 million hours in flights and 320,000 hours in driving time. So that's, I think, to me, the number one reason why you adopt that technology.
Okay, next up is Paul.
So in our use cases, we scan and map very complex structure, you know, sort of construction sites and other places, building facades using drones. And we, on this, the lower right one, the vertical facade mapping, we collected over 20,000 images from Mavic 2 Pro drones. And geolocating them was done by running the data through Pix4D, and then we pulled the pose information from Pix4D and populated on a georectified map. And that way, the architect had a way to review the facades with really high resolution, you know, all the way through with a simple floor plan in a vertical way of each facade. And then on the top is the tanker vessel. So we've done a lot of these huge bulk carriers that are getting ballast replacements for ecological reasons. And we scan those guys, and sometimes those ships are very complex. So not only do we do the scanning, but we also do the photography, and locating those photos on this complex map really helps them understand what they're looking at for the engineers to redesign it. So in our use case, in this case using our software, is allowing, Resolute allows our clients to, you know, understand complex areas and make decisions quickly, vertical or horizontal.
Okay, Noah?
So, back to this house of my mom and stepdad. They were thinking ahead quite a bit, and so every time that they poured concrete somewhere, they put conduit in the ground to connect the gate to the garage to the house, the pool equipment to the house, and pretty much everything in between. So all of this information is buried mostly in my stepdad's head. So last time I was up there, I brought the Navis VLX with me. I scanned the whole property, well, as much of it as I could. It was 12 acres, so I had limited amount of time. So we scanned the house, we scanned down the driveway, and everywhere we had conduit, we then put down a label. And so now I have images of where all of these are, and I can precisely position down to sub-inch accuracy where these conduit points are. And so we're going to be able to, going forward, build this into a picture-on-plan format. So going forward, I can share this with anybody, really, and it's going to be independent of a service provider for us to be able to access this information down the line. 20, 30 years, if something needs to go in, we'll have the information that we need.
Okay. Moving on to the next question. Who or what helped you decide to join USIBD? And I had been working, actually I met Philip in a Navisworks group in San Francisco, and we were chatting at one of these gatherings, and he mentioned E57 as a way to transfer data, and I hadn't heard of E57 at that point. So I looked it up, I called Gene Rowe, and I ended up working with him for several years, trying to add some additional features to E57 that would make it more archival. But then I ended up meeting a number of people that were members of USIBD, including John Russo, who's their president. And I was talking with John at one point, and he was trying to recruit me into USIBD, but I still was working with E57, hoping that that would be the standard that we could use. But I just wanted to show you the video that he used to recruit me into USIBD, because I think it applies not only to John Russo's leadership style, but to the leadership style within USIBD in general.
So ladies and gentlemen, at TED we talk a lot about leadership and how to make a movement. So let's watch a movement happen, start to finish, in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons from it. First, of course you know, a leader needs the guts to stand out and be ridiculed. But what he's doing is so easy to follow. So here's his first follower with a crucial role. He's going to show everyone else how to follow. Now notice that the leader embraces him as an equal. So now it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Now there he is calling to his friends. Now if you notice that the first follower is actually an underestimated form of leadership in itself. It takes guts to stand out like that. The first follower is what transforms a lone nut into a leader. It's important to show not just the leader, but the followers, because you find that new followers emulate the followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, and immediately after, 3 more people. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point. Now we've got a movement. And here, the biggest lesson, if you noticed, did you catch it? Is that leadership is over-glorified. That yes, it was the shirtless guy was first, and he'll get all the credit, but it was really the first follower that transformed the lone nut into a leader. So as we're told that we should all be leaders, that would be really ineffective. If you really care about starting a movement, have the courage to follow and show others how to follow. And when you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first one to stand up and join in.
Okay, so there are a few lone nuts in USIBD, and I count myself as one of those, so please join us in this quest to make standards to help out with the industry. So that was my answer to the question. And next up is Philip.
Yeah, USIBD, I think, is working on some really great things. What attracted me, and probably assume some of you here, is just the ability to have and to like learn about the standards that we're establishing. That is starting to become called out in contracts, starting to be given to owners, and like become the way that data is exchanged, or the way that data gets captured. Being able to have the opportunity to network with the people that are helping to build the standard is an opportunity to build a rapport and relationships with some of the best in this industry. I think like the people that are willing to contribute to this are obviously going to be on top of their game, and we can all learn from each other and raise the boats together. So I think that's definitely the most exciting opportunity here at USIBD.
Okay, and Paul.
So I joined because Ken forced me to. The real reason was the level of accuracy and opportunities to develop the standards. So I was helping with Ken on the E57 piece to try to create a file type that could house not only scan data but also point clouds. And this sort of ASTM standard seemed really interesting to me because I was scanning and doing 360 photography. But now that the USIBD has these LOA standards that are being put out and certifications in that, I think the first adopters of those kinds of certifications and putting those practices into their workflows are going to have an edge on the competition out there in the world when they're doing projects, because you could write that kind of stuff into your bidding. And it will show that you have a level of expertise that might be above some of the others. And it's not all about competition, but I think it's a really great way to standardize what can be kind of a disastrous process with people who don't know how to register scans, or maybe aren't very efficient at doing photography for asset management, So this is a way USIBD has created, and we stand behind, at this panel anyway, to support the industry to rise, to the occasion, to serve our clients in the best possible way.
Okay, Noah?
So it has been a relatively long path for me. I went to my first event down in Orange County. Josh DeStefano was hosting. Here I met John Russo as well, and this was my first exposure to USIBD at all, and I didn't know that it was a thing, and so LOD and LOA, these things were introduced to me at that point. And coming from a GIS and remote sensing background, these things were new to me, and I didn't fully understand the importance of USIBD. But something like the E57 format, for example, there's a lot of value in there. And so after interacting with Josh and John there, I went to another event, the USIBD Symposium in Las Vegas, a year or two later, and met Kelly Cohn through Josh. We all had a conversation on mobile mapping and sort of the direction that the market is going there. And then a colleague of mine, Noah Johnson, he introduced me to Ken, and since then I've been working on the POP format and trying to help from a sort of another perspective from a provider that primarily we focused on laser scanning and panoramic images in our own viewer, but moving towards being able to be sort of platform agnostic. So after that, working with Philip on getting all of our data in destruction site, and speaking with Ken, that's here I am now. So definitely at the time, my first introduction, I didn't truly see the value, but each of these touch points through time has led me to understand that it really is it's important to have these conversations, and it's great if you can be involved in them, because then you get to have your voice heard.
That's great, and there are facility managers that I've talked to that say, we weren't even in on the conversation when they decided to put that valve, water, shut-off valve above the drop ceiling of the patient's room, and they didn't even know that they would have to, what problems that would create for the hospital later. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff that sharing data with the right people, you can get ahead. Okay, the next question is, what do you see as the value of USIBD's imagery data exchange format? And for that, I think E57 is a good example here. E57 was designed as a standard, not by the companies that built the hardware that did the scanning, but it was developed because the customers who used the output of those scanners were using multiple scanners on their projects and had no way to connect them. They were either locked in to one developer's software or the data that came out of it, there was no way to get it into another piece of software. So E57 was created. It became a standard in 2011, and as I say, I worked with Gene for a number of years trying to expand it and see if we could use it for imagery, and we came to the conclusion that we didn't, and that's when I joined USIBD to create a standard which could really work with pop platforms. And so, my message today to everyone that will listen is, okay, may not be seeing this issue of transferring image data yet, but I can assure you there are projects where there are multiple pictures on plan suppliers that can't interchange that data today. As a matter of fact, if any of you were in Cindy's session just before this one, before the break, she talked about that, and she said something to the effect that there were millions of dollars worth of software costs that were wasted on projects she was working on that had 3 different companies chosen by 3 different parties in the job that use 3 different formats, and she has no way to exchange those. That's what we hope to be able to change. So that's my take on it. And Philip?
Yeah, so this new interchange, which I encourage everyone to look into, I think it's really good for the industry. These days you're hearing a lot about companies taking your data and doing what they want with it. Philosophically, this kind of flips its head where, hey, you're spending all this time capturing this data. You're out in the field, you're capturing these photos, videos, you're using different machines. Well, you should be able to own that data and not be just stuck in that platform. And so the concept of data ownership is really introduced and enabled by a unified standard like this. It's not necessarily the software or hardware manufacturer's fault. I mean, they have their own formats, ways of doing things that's specific to what they have. But just like the E57 format, we need an equivalent one for exchanging imagery, and there's lots of images being taken. Probably these days a lot more than there are scans being taken, because it's so much easier just to capture lots of photos and videos. So that data ownership is really important. Second is fostering innovation. The reason why there's lots of different platforms out there, they all have their own special use cases. Some of them can capture photos and scans at the same time, really easily. Some just have video or photo capture workflows. Some are custom built by professional service providers that have their own great viewing platforms. There needs to be this interchange so that innovation can happen in this market where people can provide solutions that best fit the use case. The standard enables that, and it's something that really excites me.
Okay, Paul?
I see this as a flexible benefit. So having maximum flexibility with your data is important. It's important to me. We have clients that are really married to certain platforms. You know, some people really just like the software they've been using and subscribing to. Maybe the customer service is amazing or whatever it is. And, you know, trying to introduce to them, and some also, I might mention, some of these clients, like general contractors, might have 27 different platforms they're using. And to come into that as a service provider or a software provider and say, here's another one, you know, there's a resistance that I've experienced that comes up. So if you can say, well, what are you using? And it's something like Struction Site or Navis or Resolute or whatever it is, or eBuilts, you know, they might say, I like this one. And so we can maybe serve that and move data from one platform to the other. And I think that's got an amazing amount of benefits. Just having something agnostic. I don't know how many times you all have experienced it, but when you try to upload certain kinds of images or scans to certain software platforms, maybe in the cloud or whatever, and it says it only accepts this format. And so then you're going through this massive lift of converting all the data to try to get it in the right format to just, you know, feed it to that platform. Or what if we had an agnostic sort of medium like we're talking about today, this interchange sort of medium that allows you know, these software platforms to accept a massive amount of file formats. You know, that takes just a massive conversion process out of the equation. And I think that's the future is IFC, you know, this E57 or whatever it's going to be, just leveling the playing field so that it can accept anything, and then people can choose what platform works best for their workflows and the clients that they're serving.
Okay, and Noah?
Yeah, so I think Paul said it really well. There are probably as many workflows out there as there are people who do things. So when you've got, you know, a million workflows, a million different customers, everyone's going to do something slightly differently. Being able to unify and meet on what does work is going to actually drive everything forward. So the example of the E57 is super powerful because I know that I can take that out from one platform into another. You know, anyone can export an E57 and move it into pretty much any tool. So having the ability to, you know, have this structured data format where, you know, maybe we collect panos with our system or panos are collected with another system, being able to unify those in a place where someone who wants them there can have them.
So at USIBD, we've been trying for some time to create this image data exchange format, and we were always looking for a venue that we could use, because many of the projects that we work on are clients who do not want any of their data shared, and for good reasons, and we got to respect that. But when we came to this conference, this is the first conference we've had since, or the first symposium we've had since COVID, I said, well, what if we could capture pictures of the Colorado Convention Center and share those across platforms? And so we set up a task to do that. You can see the results if you go to the USIBD website and you click on the first page to get the information about the conference and scroll down to where it says Struction Site. And there, if you click on that, you'll bring up a Struction Site viewer, which has data from multiple sources. And we actually had someone come in prior to the conference in early January with one of those little Theta cameras that Philip was talking about. And
Actually, yeah, just to add to that, there's actually a banner outside. You can scan the QR code and you can see that the convention center captured with the data imported from the other software solutions.
Okay, great. Sorry. We actually put that on a QR code on our banner out there, so you can click on that and then you don't have to worry. But just some data about that is that one fellow came in with a little Theta camera, and in 4 hours he did the entire, all the hallways in the, I think he had about 200 images, and all of those done and uploaded, and that was great. And then the same time, Naviz brought in one of the Alexas and walked the same circuit, and in 4 hours generated 3,000 images. And we've got some of those partially transferred over to the site, just as, but we're going to be using this as an example where we have data that we can use publicly. We've talked to the CCC about allowing us to use this, and they seem to be open to that. So that'll help us advance the standard because we have some data that we can actually share. So go check that out, and then we'll open it up for questions. And please use the mic at the stand if you have a question, and we'll be happy to answer. You can direct it to any one of the panel or the whole panel, or.
I'll go with one. What do you guys think is holding back more interoperability, more data exchange? Each of you, like your thoughts on that. What can be done to open it up more? Because I do see some things, I do see some either companies or individuals that typically hold back, but what do you think are the bigger issues there?
Well, real quick, I think that's a great question. You know, why are the other companies holding back on jumping on board with this idea? Is that kind of the question? I think it's, I think one of the things, the title of this panel is Playing Well with Others, you know, playing nice with others. And we're all doing kind of the same thing in a little bit different way, a unique way. But what's interesting is, you know, I'm going to have a quick backstory and then I'll answer the question, and that is, I use Struction Site on huge projects all the time. We use it every single day. And then we use the Navis scanner on some of those sites as well every single day. And we also use our software because it has a specific high resolution kind of viewer. It's very specific, but these are tools. And I would like to encourage people who are holding back that there's enough for everyone. And I think it might be a little bit of a scarcity mindset in that maybe there's some concerns that they might lose some of the market share if they go agnostic, or, you know, things like this. And that's just my personal thought on that. But the truth of that statement is that that's not true. There is enough for everyone, and these are just tools. And it could be partnerships that blossom from that, you know, if they jump on board. And I think the writing's on the wall that they really won't have much of a choice at some point because people will start demanding interoperability between platforms.
I agree with that. So I'll provide a perspective from the, when you're given lots of money by an investor, you're given a lot of pressure to grow your business really fast. And there's some companies out there that create softwares, you know, similar to what we do, they're like, all right, well, you gotta capture the whole market. You know, you don't want to, when you get people's data, you don't want to send it out, because we want to keep charging people forever, and we will charge them this huge price, and we want to keep increasing it over time. There's a very strong monetary incentive to not change data, and also it really depends on the type of investors you have. Luckily, our investors are actually from the industry, and they care more about advancing that, so there's less pressure for us. So, you know, we can kind of just stand up and be like, you know what, it's going to be one of our differentiators, you know, to be able to be open and to exchange. And I think it serves companies well to be able to play well. It's you know, personally, it's a kind of a moral obligation to allow people to own their data. But I think these days, in the creation of this format, consumers will have the power to demand that, you know, you either give me the ability to change my data, or I don't even want to invest in your platform. I think that's what needs to happen, and that's one of the biggest reasons why in my opinion, we're doing that. This creates pressure and something to point to, so that yeah, people can play nicely.
Yeah, I'll chime in and say that having the ability to import one format, it's a flexibility thing. So, for example, with Ivion, we can take in scans from other platforms, and that is really valuable to our customers because there's one tool that can, no tool can do everything, and this is a workflow thing, but this is also people are going to do very creative stuff, and you can't design for every possible scenario. So being able to move into the situation, say, this is when we need this is when we need that. It just makes sense. And so, the rising tide lifts all boats. We are still in somewhat of an uphill battle getting everyone in the industry to understand the benefit of pictures on plans, laser scans, and then the uptake of it is a whole nother issue. So if we can actually just say, this works well with this, we can all play well with each other, then you can pick and choose to see what works for you, and then that will dictate what you actually purchase, but you're not going to be limited. So I think it's a great goal overall. The consumer, they're the ones who are going to be returning business to your company. The providers, the owners, everyone is going to have a say in this. So if we can actually just make it simple, straightforward, you're not going to have the technical people saying, why? I know it's possible. Why are you not allowing me to do it? And then you'll have the people who are not so technical thinking the same thing from another perspective. So we got to just bring people together on it, and having a common exchange format is the easiest way to do so.
Yeah, and my take on it is, we've been talking about the digital twin, and there's a lot of talk about it, and I think Cindy Baldwin in her presentation in this room just before us was saying, nobody exactly knows what it is, but what we do know is it's going to create a lot of data, and there are a lot of companies or a lot of investors, let's say, who know, who want to get into this market. The construction market has become very hot in the past, 3 or 4 or 5 years. People are looking for ways to invest in that, and they're willing to throw a lot of money at it, thinking that they could be the dominant player in the digital twin. That's not going to happen. It's going to be more like, okay, there's a lot of little companies that do some great work, and at some point, they'll all either get acquired by, if you think of the auto industry started out with 100 different companies doing different kinds of autos, and now we have 2 or 3 major corporations. But it took many years to get to that point, and we're sort of at the beginning of this whole thing with the digital twin. I believe it'll happen, but it's not going to happen without some work interchanging data and making it easy, platform agnostic.
Anyone else have any questions for the panel?
Yes, I have a commentary. I speak Spanish, and now I feel that talk about AFC and open data and everything is like talk about Esperanto. Do you know what is Esperanto? It's the Babel Tower language that all the people must speak. It's like me. If I don't speak English, I can understand you. But if the other people don't speak the same language that we try to share with all the information, all the things, it's very difficult that it is possible. No? And I feel that the people now try to improve the tools, and in this occasion, in this forum, for example, too many people, 4 people talking about an important thing, really the same people that we are listening. And I don't know, maybe it's a dream thing that is possible, has a same language, has a good way to can share all the information that all the people talking about point clouds, pictures, drawings, BIM models, and other things in the same way. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe the question is for all us. No? What must be do to can be that all the peoples feel the necessary that we have this is the speak the same language. Sorry, my English.
And I think that's an excellent question because, you know, just an example, I have a friend who spoke German. He learned German in college here in the US, and then he moved to Germany. And he lived in Germany for many years, and he spoke fluent German from what he'd learned in college. But when it came to getting his car fixed, there was a specific language for auto mechanics that they never taught in school. And, you know, he had trouble getting his car fixed because he couldn't speak their language. And he fell in love with a young German woman, but he couldn't, there was no language for love that he had, so he couldn't talk to her. And I think, you know, we've got the same sort of thing going on here. All of these terms are being spoken here, and oftentimes the first place you hear them is at one of these conferences, like POP, P-O-P, you know, the pictures on plans. That's something that I've used for some time, but I think, you know, we introduced it here as a way to talk about all of us, not just one of us. Certainly there are a lot of software that's like Google Translate that is able to almost keep up with someone that's speaking and translate into whatever language you're listening to, or that you understand. But I agree. It really would be nice if there was a way that we could all understand each other at a variety of levels, and that's tough. It's a tough problem because especially when there's innovation going on and people are inventing new things all the time, they got to name it, and so they pick a name in whatever language they're most familiar with, and you know it's tough. So I have friends in South America who are also interested in this topic. So you know, I actually tried to get one of my friends in Chile to pitch our services to one of his suppliers down there, and just that it was too big a barrier. They just didn't understand at that time. Maybe now they will, but still there's the language barrier. And I mean, a lot of these software programs can easily create manuals and so on in other languages, but when there's new terms coming along, it's hard to keep up with that. So anybody else?
I think you bring a really great point up. You know, just simply for translation services, to be a part of the USIBD, so that we can, you know, Ken just wrote a book. It's out on the back table there about some of the stuff we're talking about, and just having this translated in many languages so that it speaks to more people throughout the world for this type of idea. You know, what we're creating here has its origins in the United States, but I think it's absolutely applicable anywhere in the world as a best practice, potentially, you know. So that's a great kind of idea, and I think we'll need to find some folks to lead the effort on sort of the multilingual or just a multinational kind of effort to spread the word of this idea of standardizing building documentation.
Yeah, I would like to add that it's an incredibly complex topic, and there's so many facets and nuances that you end up getting deeper and deeper into the layers of the meaning of a word in order to actually transmit the specific nuance that you hope to. And so in order to streamline that somewhat is an admirable goal, but it's certainly going to be a Herculean effort in order to be able to discuss everything that we do in a level of detail where everyone is able to understand and transmit the significance and nuance of what it is they're discussing. So I certainly see the importance. I hope that some project like this would be more successful than the distribution of Esperanto.
Any more questions? So I'll end with one final one. What do you guys think? I know some of you are developing software. I'm not asking any trade secrets. What do you think we'll be talking about in 2 years? What will, as far as imagery goes, where will the conversation shift towards? Will we still be talking about interoperability? Will we talk about animations? What are your thoughts? Where do you see it going in 2 years? I don't want to say 1 year because who knows what's going to happen with COVID, but in 2 years, what are we going to be talking about?
Well, since I'm come from a technical background, I actually worked in the semiconductor industry for many years. And so my first response to that is we'll be talking about how cheap those laser scanners are that are using solid state lasers to rather than the rotating mirror and so on. They are going to be, that's going to drop the bottom out of the price for LiDAR capture. And you're seeing that in automotive, that's where it's really being driven. So I don't know. There's going to be a shift when the amount of data that's available takes another tenfold leap, and that could happen within the next 2 years. So, anybody else?
Seem to keep jumping in, and I think one piece of that is going to be you're going to see measurable photos, 3D models from photos that are lickety split. You know, we've been seeing Matterport take over the real estate market. We've been seeing, you know, these really rapid collection systems like Struction Site and OpenSpace AI, and now rapid scanning solutions like the SLAM stuff that Navis is doing. I think that you're just going to start seeing photos become as accurate as point clouds in some cases. The photogrammetry technology is exponentially rising in its ability to do that. So you're going to see, I think, contextual information in a very inexpensive, whether it's solid state LiDAR or just photos. It's going to be very cheap and very easy to use, very turnkey, to the point where any kind of project engineer or anybody on a site can just go do it themselves. So as software providers, I think we need to be prepared for that people are going to want to start doing this themselves, and the service provider industry, unless it's really specialized, as it stands now, is going to transform. And we're not going to have to go out there for 3 or 4 days to scan a building because you're going to have such robust photo capture capabilities that you'll get measurable data within the tolerances required for the project, you know, in no time at all. So I think that's where things are going.
I want to jump in here too. So yeah, the industry moves really fast. I think everyone here can say, like, just when we started Struction Site, we were mostly you just take photos, you add it to drawings, and yeah, it takes 200. In 4 hours, you can capture maybe 2 or several hundred photos. Today, in 4 hours, when you use video with Struction Site, we captured 28,000 photos, all automatically located using AI. It's just like that. You know, technology moves so fast, AI is so ubiquitous, that you can capture a lot more frequently. And what I think we're going to be talking about in 2 years is, you know, this interchange format is going to start to go really well. I hope, and you know, we're going to work hard towards that. But going beyond an interchange standard and using it to verify like contractual obligations to what's installed, I think it's going to be a really big possibility starting this year, actually. People are actually using photos to confirm pay applications and say that certain pieces of work are installed per contract. There's opportunities here for us to record these transactions in a public ledger, such as powered by blockchain crypto technology. So I hope we can be talking about blockchain tech and a standard for that type of format to publish to in a couple years.
So,
You didn't expect that, right? A blockchain.
so just a different take on or answer to the question. This is an iPhone, the latest. It has solid-state LiDAR on it. That image I showed of the handrail, I actually scanned with my iPhone and got a point cloud and measured from that. But the measurement was not accurate enough for me to use to locate the bolts that had to hold it in. But it's coming, and the wave is coming.
I think I would just add that the added intelligence that's coming from photos, LiDAR, the fusion of all these sensors is really gonna drive down the cost of analysis. And so I think one of the biggest things right now is that in order to go out, collect data, and produce deliverables and actionable information, there's still a huge amount of effort on the side of a human. So, being able to apply machine learning to these things and to derive measurements and plans and all of this stuff in an automated manner is going to be de rigueur in 2 years.